Hey there, and thanks for taking the time to stop by and check out my video. This is one I've really been wanting to bring to you for quite a while, and it's around the concept of practical precision rifle, your system, and what that looks like in action. So if you like the sounds of that, stick around because I'm going to give you an overview of how my system ran in a practical precision rifle match. I recently finished shooting the Steel City Rifleman Challenge in Central Alabama with a couple of my buddies, and that match was very much in line with what I feel like practical precision rifle is. It's giving you long stage times, it's giving you unknown targets at unknown distances, and allowing you the flexibility to show up to the stage and use your gear to make connections on those targets out at distance. Super fun to be able to put this gear to the test in a match like that. Also throughout the video, I'm going to splice in some footage of me shooting and my buddies shooting to give you an idea of some of the differences between the gear that I ran and the gear that they ran and how they approached stages versus how I did. Really cool perspective, in my opinion, to see how everyone approached it, and then ultimately, it was a super fun match. If you're in the Southeast and you want to put your long range setup to the test, check out some of the next matches down there at Steel City. It was a ton of fun, great folks, and I had a blast down there. Now, what do we have in store for the video? From here, we're going to move into a gear review where I'm going to give you a close-up look at what I ran. I'll give you a 100-yard breakdown of what the rifle did accuracy-wise and velocity-wise with the Ally Munitions that was sent to me for use in this video. We'll use that as a baseline, and then I'll move into the actual match. I'm going to give you a look at each of the stages that we shot, how I performed, how my buddies performed, and then ultimately how I finished up in the match. And then at the end of the video, you'll join me back here where we're going to break down my match performance. We're going to break down the gear that I ran. And I'm going to run through kind of my thoughts on how my setup worked, and then maybe some of the opportunities that I found for improvement. Now, while I'm doing that, I'd love to hear you in the comments down below. Tell me about your system. What are you running versus what I'm running? Is there opportunities that you see for improvement here for myself? Definitely, I'm here to learn with you guys. I'm no expert. I have a ton of fun doing this, but I'm always looking to challenge myself and do better. So if there's an opportunity for improvement, I'd love to hear it from you down in the comments below. So from here, let's move into a gear review and start working through what it looked like to shoot this match, what the match was, and then a breakdown at the end. Let's take a look at the gear that we're going to run in the Steel City Rifle Challenge down there in Central Alabama. Certainly there's a lot of gear that goes into precision rifle shooting, so we'll take a close-up, quick look at the gear. You'll see me run it in the match footage, and then at the end of the video, we'll wrap back up with a review of how each piece fit into my long-range precision rifle puzzle. Certainly the heart of the system is the rifle, and here you can see I'm running my LMT MWS circa 2010 rifle, equipped with an LMT 20-inch 6.5 Creedmoor barrel 1-in-8 twist. As a package, I've got quite a few rounds on this. I've shot at many matches. It's a great shooter, and it's easy to shoot accurately. I love shooting this rifle. For a trigger, I'm actually running a Ballistic Engineering Accurized AR match trigger. This is one that they sent out to me for use on the channel, and so far, after quite a few rounds, I'm very impressed. Really easy to install as it's a single drop-in unit. It's got a flat trigger bow in it. It's got a really clean, crisp break, probably about 3 to 4 pounds, and very short reset. So it's a great precision rifle trigger. Easy to take those accurate shots, and that short reset means they can be very fast follow-up shots. For a suppressor on the end of the rifle, you're going to see my Griffin Armament PSR7. This is one they sent out to me for use on the channel. You've seen it in many previous videos, but something really cool that I noticed on this particular rifle when I installed it is around the blowback. So when Griffin was telling me about their cans, they explained to me they're a very low back pressure design. The baffle design, the venting out the front, means they're going to put less gas back into the system. And I thought to myself, okay, cool. All new modern cans are low back pressure. I've never had a back pressure problem. Why does that matter to me? Well, this LMT showed me exactly why. So years ago, the can I set this rifle up to run is a Surefire 7.62 SS. It's a long reflex suppressor, and I thought it was low back pressure. Love the way it sounds, love the lockup. Great can, but you can't get them now. I noticed, however, when I installed that on this rifle, I started to get slam fires and doubles, meaning I pull the trigger once and I get multiple rounds fired out of the rifle. That's a problem, can be very dangerous. So to fix that, I installed a PRI adjustable gas block, and I had to cut the gas flow back, slow my carrier velocity down to stop that. What I learned in that moment is that can had a lot of back pressure, which was causing issues with this LMT rifle. After installing the gas block, no problem, it ran fine for years. Well, then I get this Griffin, I install it on my rifle, I go out to the range, and I find my rifle won't function. I was getting short stroking. What I found is that Griffin really was significantly less back pressure than the old Surefire, and I didn't have enough gas in the system to cycle the rifle. So to fix it, open my gas block up, put more gas into the system, get my velocity where I needed it to be, and it ran fine, as you'll see throughout the video. As a shooter though, I thought it was really cool to be able to see a direct first-hand difference in blowback between that old Surefire and this new design Griffin. It was really cool. The gas block told the story. I had to open it up to make the rifle run. That was really neat for me, and I became a believer in that moment that this is a low back pressure can. Now, an important part of the rifle that you need to know, you have to have set up, it's critical in this type situation, is the optic, rangefinder, and mount. So for an optic, I'm running a Leupold Mk5 5-25 with a tremor 3 reticle in it. Really like those Christmas tree style reticles. They're very fast, especially paired with a rangefinder like this. I'm able to range with the rifle and the Impact 4000, get my drop information, and then hold that in that Christmas tree. No dialing. If I miss, I can quickly correct. Great package right here together. The mount is the Badger Ordnance Condition One. I've equipped it with their level over here on the side as well as their data board. So really like this mount is it allowed me to attach multiple accessories to impact my effectiveness downrange. It's also got the mount for the laser rangefinder, their rangefinder fixture or laser fixture, what they call it, I believe it is. Overall, very nice mount. Just got this the other day, mounted it up. Really like how it all comes together as a package. The last piece of the rifle package is going to be the ammunition that we fire. The ammunition in this video is from Ally Munitions. This is their 140 ELDM load. Now, a couple of weeks ago, they had me down to Texas. I actually got to tour their facility there and see where they make the ammunition, and it was really cool to see the attention to detail they have. You think about this ammunition, this is premium precision rifle, long-range ammunition. You think about maybe your hand loads. You're meticulous about the details in those loads. Brass prep, powder drop, bullet seating, the whole 9 yards. That's exactly what Ally does with each of these rounds. They have a meticulous process to ensure consistency across the board for their rounds. They've been a huge supporter of my channel. I really appreciate their support. They provided the ammunition here. They provided the Mk5 scope, and they helped me out on this Vortex Impact 4000. Appreciate their support and would ask that when you look at your next long-range precision rifle related purchase, you think about Ally Munitions as they're putting out a premium product. They've been a huge supporter, and they're great folks to deal with. With that, let's move into the 100-yard portion of the video where I'll show you what the rifle does there at 100 and what I do to get ready to shoot a match. Then we'll move into the match footage. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about my setup? Is there any piece of kit that I'm missing? Do I have too much kit? Let me know. I'd love to chat with you. And then join me at the end of the video for a review of the whole setup. Now, I just mounted this scope in this Badger mount. So I started out at 25 yards to make sure I'm on paper, and then moved back to the 100-yard line to gather velocity, confirm my zero, and check out how my rifle is shooting. Now let's take an in-depth look at what I did here on paper. Now really quick before we do that, I gotta mention this Garmin chronograph. So I purchased this with my own money. I was really excited when this hit the market. This thing is a game changer and worth every penny. So what you'll see in the video here as I shoot in just a second, I fired 20 rounds using the chronograph, able to check my zero, check my groups all at the same time. When I run the magneto speed, sometimes you have to worry about point of impact shift or group changing with that magneto speed. That is not a concern with the Garmin. Really, really excited about this piece of kit. You'll be seeing it in many more of my videos. Now, what did we do first off? 25 yards, I was aiming at the center dot and impacted low. So I adjusted up, moved back to the 100-yard line where I fired these 2 rounds that are just a little bit low outside of the group, saw where they landed, and then made my connection and fired these groups right here centered up. And I was happy with that zero, so I zeroed out my turrets. Then I decided, using the Garmin, given it's not going to change groups or change point of impact, I want to fire 20 rounds across the chronograph of my Ally Munitions 140 ELDM load to get an idea of how it's performing for velocity. And what you'll see is an average of about 2635 feet per second. So that's pretty solid for a 140 out of a 20-inch barrel. What I was most impressed about though, across 20 rounds, is an SD of 9 and an extreme spread of 27. That is really solid for 20 rounds. So very happy with the velocity performance. Now for groups, what did we see? Well, let me roll in the shooting footage so you can take a look as I'm shooting these groups. But you think about a match, it's very likely I'm going to be firing at least 10 rounds, maybe pushing 20 rounds in a stage, which will put some heat in the rifle. And I wanted to replicate that in my performance on paper. So the first thing that you'll see me do is fire 10 rounds, 5 of those at the top left dot, and then immediately 5 of those at the top right dot. Then I walk down range, check my groups, reset the GoPro, reload my magazine, and fire 10 more rounds. First 5 at the lower left dot, and the second 5 at the bottom right dot, totaling 20 rounds in a matter of a couple of minutes. Put a lot of heat in the system. I was seeing mirage through the scope as I got to those final rounds, but ultimately it gave me a great idea of what I'm doing for velocity. I'm very confident in my zero, and I'm happy with how the rifle's shooting. So let's take a look at my groups. Now, unfortunately, I forgot my tape measure, so I'll have to splice in an image here so that you can actually get a measurement. But really quick, kind of off the cusp here, the first 5 rounds, you can see that's a beautiful group, zeroed up perfectly. I'd call that probably 0.75 inches. I immediately moved into the top right dot where I fired 5 rounds. Not sure with these upper 2, I don't know what happened there. That could have been me, maybe I was getting fatigued. Those flew a little bit outside of the group, probably opening this up to 1.5 inches to 1.75 overall. Ultimately though, 3 of those are still where they needed to be. Then, took a couple minute break. My third 5-round group, this was the first out of the second mag, landed exactly where it needed to, pretty much on top of where the first ones did, so no real heat shift there. That one I'm going to call it 0.75 inches as well. Very happy with that. Immediately moved over to the bottom right dot where I fired these 5 rounds. I'm going to call that 1 inch, still centered up. So ultimately, very impressed with how this LMT is shooting with the Ally Munitions 140 ELD. I think we're going to be able to shoot very well in this match. So next up, I'll plug this into my shooter app, make sure that's good to go, and you'll see me next time on the range at the match.
Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Stand by, engage.
So our first stage here is called Troop Line, where we're going to engage 12 IPSC-style targets from about 350 to about 750 yards with 1 round apiece. So as you can see there, my first round was an impact, and we're going to go ahead and connect here as well. Now this stage was a ton of fun. This is the style shooting that I really enjoy doing. Prone position, multiple targets, find them, impact there, hold over, and make your impact. Really important to understand what's happening with the wind here. There wasn't much. When I shot this stage, I'm favoring just left edge of these targets. But I really used my data board here. So prior to this stage, we did know the distance of each of these targets. So I was able to create just a quick range card. Then I'm checking with my left eye there before shooting each of these targets. So I knew the distance. I went ahead and wrote in the drop information. And then all I'm doing is holding over in that tremor 3 reticle, whatever specified amount, and then favoring left edge for the windage. You can see my first miss there, just off that right-hand side. And we're back on steel again at a slightly bigger target. Now, as I'm shooting up that hill, I had to raise my bipod to get enough elevation out of the front of the rifle, using that Fulcrum rear bag to get on the next 4 targets. Let's see, I'm down 4 targets, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing you had to watch on this stage was just keeping track of your targets. There was a lot of them out there, a lot of pieces of steel, and you definitely had to understand where you were at so you didn't get mixed up on your data card. We're shooting the bottom target here.
Little one? Yeah, little guy.
Ultimately, I wrapped up this stage with 10 impacts. Really happy with that performance. Next up is going to be a stage with some movement. For stage 2, we're going to shoot off of 2 different barricades. We're going to shoot off of the tripod that you see me on there. And then we're going to transition over to that barricade there with the cutouts. 12 rounds, we're shooting the same target each time at about 615 yards. This first array, I actually go 2 for 2 on the impact here off of this tripod. Now I transition over, and this is where I kind of mixed up my plan. My plan was actually to go kneeling here and shoot off of that lower step on the barricade. and then work my way up. But unfortunately, that went out the window. I started from a high kind of standing position, very unsteady. You saw 2 fast misses there as I transitioned back over to the tripod. The tripod was handy because I was able to use my Ultradyne tripod as a rear support. So you can see I'm actually pretty steady on these shots. There's an impact. Slight miss. We'll transition back over. I'm going to go to the kind of middle height position. Going to be pretty unsteady here and have some challenges with the impacts. I felt like my movement between the barricades was solid and relatively smooth here. Able to get into that tripod fairly quickly, and again, very steady here on that tripod barricade. Impact on the right-hand side. And this one you're going to see just a little bit of splash there off the left-hand side. Now, my original plan was to be shooting from that high standing position at this point in the stage, but unfortunately I mix that up. I go to a kneeling position with tripod rear support, very steady, get one more impact to finish up with 5. So definitely didn't do as well here as I would have hoped. Now at this point, we transition up the hill where we're going to shoot an array of stages off the top of a mountain. So this first stage, we're going to move from our starting position down into the woods to one of 3 shooting positions. We have an unknown target out here. We have to carry all of our gear with us down to that stage, range the target, and shoot it. So prior to the stage, I actually plug in my windage information into the Impact 4000. At this point, I plugged in 10 miles an hour, 90 degrees from the left. So here you can see I'm shooting off my Ultradyne tripod, fairly stable position. I'm going to use that bag as a rear support, and I'm going to range that target out there at about 570 yards. 572. So very generous target, well within range of my rifle and my shooting capabilities off of the tripod. So here you can see I've ranged the target. Now I'm getting steady to be able to put the rounds on the target. So we're going to favor over just a bit. We're going to favor left a little bit. And we're going to connect with our first round, actually. Really cool performance here. There's an impact. Safe. A little bit wobbly. Now we transition from our first position. We're going to go up the hill, carrying all of our gear to our second position, where we're going to do the same thing. You have to get 3 impacts on the target before you can relocate to the new position. So I choose to shoot off of the Ultradyne tripod from kind of a strange kneeling position, but as you can see here, my buddy's tripod with the center pole, more of a monopod for him. He had to use a bag separately from the tripod, carry all that gear up the hill. So really handy at this point to be able to clip in, carry all of your gear together. So here we both are at the second position. Takes me a little bit of time here to get ready, but I get into a fairly steady position to be able to make an impact there with the first round. So there's my 3 impacts, and now we'll relocate back to the final position, moving up the hill. Again, the whole rig is clipped together, so I just have to pick up one piece and relocate. Now this position, tripod goes down into a little bit of a hole. It's going to take me a minute to realize this. Very awkward position. I get down in a position and realize I can't shoot over that knoll, so I've got to lift my tripod up, lift those legs. And now I'll end up in a fairly sturdy position to take these final shots and get my last set of impacts. Impact. And here I'm going to wrap up with 8 impacts. So this stage was pretty challenging for me. We had to run down from a start position to this tree that you can see me on. There was 3 unknown targets out in the field, painted up kind of with different paint schemes. And what we had to do was move into this first position, locate the 3 targets, range them, outline, and then call out which target we were going to shoot to the RO so that they could have their eyes on the glass when we made that shot. We're shooting through a set of trees there in front of me that made the field of view quite small. And as you can see, I'm having a challenge actually finding the targets where I should even be looking. So the point of this stage was to kind of show up blind, locate the targets, and shoot them. In my opinion, this is where having a rifle-mounted rangefinder really helped me, because I was able to use the full package to be able to locate these targets. You'll see me at some point here finally locate them. I'm still looking, burning a lot of time here. I'm almost a minute into a 4-minute stage now. Well, we'll just shoot them. All right.
Where are you going first?
So my first one will be down here, red. So now I have identified my first target. You can barely see it behind the tree. I have to move over. There we go. Target with the red head. So much time that I burned here. Ooh. Also disappointed looking back. There's my impact. Okay. I wish I would have been using my tripod as a rear support here. Those targets were relatively close in the 300 to 450 yard range. You can see that one there with the red outline. Generous targets, but still using that tripod as a rear support really would have helped me be more confident in my shots. There's my impact. Okay. Now this last target, there he is, red U. As a shooter, it was really hard for me to find. You can see it right there. I just happened to land on it. 444. 2.4. And there's my impact. So now that I've got my impacts on the 3 targets, we move down to that red marked stump, where we repeat the course of fire. Opted not to bring the tripod as I could get a pretty steady sitting position, but man, I'm going to burn up a lot of time here trying to find these targets. I zoom out. Head. There we go, red head. Made my impact. Remember my held from previous on that one. Red outline. There's my second target. 1.3. Got some challenges hitting this target here for some reason off of the stump. There we go, I finally connect. Now, this is where I have a really tough time finding that third target out there in the field. I'm looking way to the left of where I needed to be. Red U. There we go, I finally get this target. At this point, I'm going to be slow on the range, slow on the shot. I'm going to miss and not connect. I'm going to end up with, I believe, 5 points on this stage. Should have done way better on this stage, but I burned a lot of time, had several missed shots, as you can see there. Oh, seriously? Now this next stage is the type of shooting I really enjoy doing. We had 2 targets at about 1,060 yards. We had 15 rounds and plenty of time to put rounds on each of those targets. So we're going to shoot off the back of the tailgate here. You're going to see the set of targets when I zoom in. They're in this red circle. The first is a 36-inch square at 1,064, and the second is a little bit closer, E-type silhouette. The course of fire would be shoot your round, impact on the 36-inch square, transition to the E-type, impact, transition back. So just transition back and forth between those 2 targets throughout your 15 rounds, and every impact is a point. Now I have some challenges here. I dialed my scope up 10 mils to make the shot, but I found wind was coming from about the 4 or 5 o'clock, so a total shift from where it was previously in the match. and I could not spot impacts. In the wet ground, it was really hard to see where those bullets were landing, so it takes me several rounds to land on that 36-inch square. Once I finally do, then I'm going to have a challenge with my rangefinder. So once I get my impact on the 36-inch square, I transition up to the E-type silhouette, and at this point I'm finding my range is way off. I'm ranging here at about 1,400 yards, which I knew was way wrong given the 36-inch square I just hit was 1,064. I failed to realize this error was the result of me dialing my scope up and not returning to my 0 for the rangefinder. So not knowing the range of the closer target, I just held bottom edge, roughly 0.5 to 1 mil low from where I was on the 36-inch square, hold the same wind, and I start connecting. So at this point, you're going to see my rate of fire increase as I start making every impact I shoot between the two targets from here on out, ultimately landing with, I believe it was 8 or 9 points on this stage. Unfortunately, I couldn't have my Triggercam because it interfered with the magnification on my scope. Here's a super fun stage in the match. So you can see we had to shoot out of the orange square on the ground. We're shooting down into that open field area there. Our first set of targets is going to be a Know Your Limits plate rack. So I set my tripod down that I'm clipped into. I get my rifle up and I locate the plate rack. And then I'm going to range that plate rack. It's going to be in the ballpark of 380 to 400 yards. We're going to engage from left to right on the plate rack. Hit or miss. We're going to move on. .82, 1 place. You can see I got my range, close my bolt, and now we're going to hold over just a bit and run through the plate rack. That impacts on the very bottom part of that plate, if you can see that. Well, this final one they're going to call as an impact. I don't see it swing, but I'll take the point. Next up, we're going to transition out, and there's a set of hidden targets that we have to locate and call out to the RO to shoot. All right. Blue pool noodle. .306, 1 mil. I'm going to range that target. It's in the ballpark of 300 yards. All these are between 300 and 500. All right, red pool noodle, but the target looks off to the right. Is that correct? All right. This is interesting because I'm trying to range through the trees. I'm getting a range that I know is wrong. So I'm looking for something else, similar distance to range. So I swing over to the plate rack that I know is at about 380. And then I decide actually just to range this red pool noodle, which is close to the target, and use that as my distance. Impact. Okay. Ooh, yellow. That yellow is pretty tough. You can see that black target in the dark spot of the trees, and there's no backstop here. So if you miss, it's going to be hard to call a correction. Pretty far shot here. Thankfully, I got 2 impacts. Now I have 1 more plate to shoot. Purple noodle there, just to the right of my crosshair, and then the black target again, ranging through the trees. I'm going to range the noodle instead. 52.3. Unfortunately, I'm not going to connect here, but I did wrap up with 9 impacts, which is a solid score. This stage is a ton of fun. Just off the right. So here we are on the last of our long-range stage. Now this one's a blast. While we waited to shoot, under the tent, we actually saw a map on the ground, and the map on the ground indicated target identifiers and then a field layout. So you're going to see us actually sitting here writing out a range card that I used on my rifle with the target identifiers and the layout of the field. So then I draw a poker chip. C3. And then use my rifle and setup to locate that target, range it, and shoot it. So you can see there's quite a bit of time that I burn here getting ready to shoot these targets. So open my scope cap, had that closed because the rain was coming down. I didn't want that on my scope. You can see zooming out to try to locate these targets. Right, I'm using my range card to generally find the area of them. All right, I found my target. Had a pretty decent left to right wind coming here that the vortex is going to account for. I'm going to dial on the hold that I get out of the vortex. I'm going to hold the windage to the left that it calls for, and you'll see the results here in just a second. Pretty cool. First round hit out there at about 800 yards using the data out of the Impact 4000. Really impressed with that piece of kit. Have to get 3 impacts to move on. There we go. Safe. Now I'm going to draw a new target. We're going to locate it in the field and repeat the process. You'll notice me returning to 0. That's because I learned my lesson off of the tailgate. In order to range with the Impact 4000, you have to be back at your 0 to get an accurate distance. A lot of time getting burned here locating these targets. Even though I have a range card, there's still a lot of steel out there to look at. Oh, there he is. All right. 886, 7.6 at 1.5. I'm going to dial that back on so that I can hold that wind call out of the Impact 4000. No call on the miss. There we go with an impact. There's my 3 hits. We'll go ahead and draw one more poker chip. H1 right there. Perfect. You can see that target's just in front of it. Now here's a mistake. I forgot to return to 0, so I'm trying to range dialed. I realized this, thankfully. Go back to my 0. Range again to get a correct distance. Dial that and then shoot. 7 mils, 1.4. All right, this final stage, know your limits at 400 yards. I'm only going to connect on 2 targets out of the 5 on the plate rack. Probably because I was shooting too quickly, not holding enough wind. Wish I would have connected a couple more times. Well, that wraps up the match. Now let's take a couple of minutes and review my performance, how I finished up, my thoughts around an area that I felt like my gear performed very well, and what my opportunities for improvement are. Now, how did I finish the match? I wrapped up with 55 points, which placed me 9th out of 20 shooters. Top 50%, I'll take that. I didn't zero out any stages. Certainly, I wish I would have done better, but there's always room to get better, and this match allowed me to see those areas to focus on. Now, before we move into opportunities for improvement, let's talk about what I felt like worked well. Certainly, the rifle, the ammo, the trigger, the whole 9 yards, the shooting package performed well throughout the match. I didn't have any downtime as a result of my rifle. That's huge on a match like this, because if you have downtime as a result of your rifle, you're burning time that is of no value for you. So No failures from any part of the rifle system. It shot very well. You saw those sub-MOA groups out there at 100 yards. Really happy with this package as a shooter. I thought this gas gun worked very well in this match. Those were generous, practical targets, and this thing was more than capable of making all of the impacts that I needed in the match. Now, what else worked well? Something I was really excited about was to see the Impact 4000, how it worked in a match like this, and how it integrated in with my scope. This, I believe, was critical in this match. So you look at what I'm running here. Weapon-mounted laser rangefinder allowed me to go up to a stage, set my rifle down, use the optic on my rifle to find my targets, and then range them with a very precise center reticle. So with this package, I was already in a firing position. I had a precise aiming point. I had up to 25x magnification with my rangefinder to get on that target and range it. And then, the really cool thing about the Impact 4000, it gave me all of my ballistic drop and windage information almost instantly within a couple of seconds. So, huge advantage here to be able to range from the rifle and almost instantly get my drop information. You look at what my buddies ran, they used handheld rangefinders, and it was a lot more cumbersome versus what I had. So they ran up to their stage, they had to set their gear down, set their rifle down, then get a confident ranging position with that rangefinder, but they had a huge reticle to range with. They only had 6, 8, or 10x magnification. Just wasn't as handy because then they had to move their rifle back up into the position after they'd written their information down on a data card and shoot those targets. So running the rifle-mounted laser rangefinder, I believed, eliminated a lot of those extra steps and a lot of the confusion introduced by the handheld rangefinder. Certainly they were effective. They all made their impacts or made multiple impacts, but man, I just was really happy with how this integrated. Really impressed with also the ballistic drop information on this rangefinder. There, before I shot stage 4, the uphill tripod, I actually plugged in my windage information. At that point, it was an 8 mile an hour, 90 degrees from the left. So I plugged that in, and the Impact 4000 remembered that as we changed firing direction on top of that mountain. So really cool to see. I had multiple first round impacts, and then my windage calls as I changed direction were so close. So really happy with this Impact 4000. I know there's many of these options on the market, but really happy with this for the money. The other piece of that puzzle is the reticle in my scope. So I felt like that Tremor 3 reticle in my scope was an advantage. I was able to go up to a stage, range with the Impact 4000, get that drop information, and then in my reticle, hold what I needed to connect on that target. So say I needed a 4.2 mil elevation hold, I just held over. And then say I needed 1.2 mils of wind, I just held that to the left or right, whatever it was, and sent my round. Watched for the impact, made that correction. As a shooter, it felt very smooth and quick. Compared to what my buddies were running, they would look at their data card, get their elevation hold from their rangefinder, and then dial that on. So they had to dial on 4.2, they had to go in, hold their windage, make their correction, and then for the next target, dial again. So definitely functional. Many of you have probably done that for years. That's how I used to shoot before I swapped over to the Tremor 3. But I really like that Christmas tree style reticle. I really like how it integrates in with the rangefinder in a practical shooting scenario like this. Now again, certainly you can make hits with either option, but this one with practice, I feel like made me more confident and saved me time. The other critical piece in this match is a quality tripod. Now what I'm shooting here is an Ultradyne carbon fiber tripod with their Arca Picatinny ball head. They reached out, actually sent this to me. It landed just a day or two before the match. So my first time using this tripod was in the match. Ultimately, I found this tripod very sturdy, very easy to set up, and I really like the fact that it allowed me to clip in with my rifle and tote the whole package together. That I felt like was a big advantage in many of the stages. Where you're moving through a stage or you're moving uphill with the tripod or multiple other places with the tripod, I was able just to pick up the whole package and run around without having to think about grabbing my rifle, grabbing my tripod, banging it into things. The fact that I could clip in with the tripod, I felt like was huge from an ease of shooting perspective in each stage. Now certainly this tripod, there are several advantages to it that I found throughout the match. I really like how the legs, you push down on the latch to extend them out. But the big thing that I noticed versus my buddy's tripod is the center pole right here. So the center pole actually would allow me to lift the rifle even higher if I needed to. I never did. But the advantage is the center pole is actually removable. And what I found in that stage where we shot uphill, 3 different positions is on the uneven terrain, my buddy's tripod, the center pole could not be removed and actually hit the ground. So he was not able to use it as a tripod. He had to use it basically as a monopod. So the ability to remove this center section allowed me to get down low, shoot prone even if I wanted to, but shoot off of that uneven terrain without any issues. So I felt like this was a pretty cool advantage, something that I'm really glad I could do versus what I saw out of another tripod. The other advantage of a good tripod is definitely a rear support. So you saw me use this as a rear support in a couple of the stages. So not only can you shoot off of it, you get a very steady shooting platform off of the tripod, maybe using a bag on the rear section. But if you're going to shoot off of a barricade, maybe when I was transitioning between barricades, rest the front of the rifle on a barricade with something like this clip-on wee bad bags. There's a sticky section here with straps. Allows you to strap it onto the forearm of the rifle, so you get a lot of support up front. And the fact that it clips on is huge, so I don't have to carry it throughout a stage. But then on the back side, definitely use your tripod. You can use the legs to use as a rear support. So ultimately, you can get a very sturdy shooting position with a bag up front off of a barricade and a tripod on the back side of the rifle. So those are things that I felt like worked quite well. Definitely the other thing is a nice rear bag. So what I ran in a couple of the prone stages was this Fulcrum rear bag. This is a new company out of California. They sent it to me just before the match. The size of this bag is just about perfect, and the weight and the feel of it worked really well as a rear bag, say on the troop line stage and off of the tailgate. So it's about 7 inches tall, 4 to 5 inches wide. So you think about shooting uneven terrain, there's multiple options here to turn this bag to get the elevation I needed out of the back of the bag. Something I did notice, I need to put a carabiner on it so I can carry it easily. But definitely bags and tripod, rangefinder, scope, these were all things that I felt like helped me shoot well. Now, opportunities for improvement in this match. The big one that I noticed, and I'm sure you saw it in the footage, is time management. I burned a lot of time getting up to a stage, getting my gear set down, finding the targets, ranging them. It felt like I was super slow, and watching the video, it looked slow. So what I need to be doing is spending more time with my system, working together to get on target, get into a position, find those targets, range them, and shoot them quickly. It's amazing how many more impacts you can hit if you don't time out, which I did on a couple of stages. So time management was the big one that I felt like I really need to improve on, and definitely that just comes with practice and working with your gear. So that said, is there something else you saw in this match from an opportunity to improve? I'd love to hear it from you. I'd also love to hear from you down in the comments below. Would you like to see me do more of this match style content? I love shooting matches. I haven't done much of it in the past couple of years, but now that I'm back into it, I'm having a blast. I'd love to know, are you enjoying this content? Or do you enjoy what I've built this channel on here in the past year or two? So let me know down below, where do you want me to spend my time, whether it's matches or reviews, whatever. I'd love to hear it. Now finally, if you've made it this far, I appreciate you sticking around. I'd like to ask you to help me grow this channel. There's a couple ways you can do that. Like this video, share it with your friends, comment down below. The most impactful would be subscribe to the channel so that you're in line for the new content that I drop when it comes out. With that, don't forget to check me out on Instagram. It's a great place for us to interact, chat about what I've got going on. Maybe I can help you become a better shooter. So once again, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you'll join me in my next one.